In the small town of Fairview, there was an old mansion that had been abandoned for years. It was a massive Gothic structure with creaky stairs and dusty rooms that had once belonged to a wealthy family with a dark history. The locals whispered of strange happenings in the mansion, of flickering lights and disembodied voices that echoed through the halls. Despite the warnings, a group of friends decided to spend the night in the mansion, eager to explore the spooky corridors and uncover its secrets. They brought flashlights, sleeping bags, and a sense of adventure as they made their way through the creaking front door. At first, it seemed like any other old mansion, dusty and silent, with nothing more than a few old paintings and antique furniture. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. The flashlights flickered and died, leaving the friends stumbling blindly through the dark. The air grew colder, and the floorboards creaked as if someone was walking through the halls. They tried to brush it off, telling each other that it was just their imagination. But as they settled down to sleep, they heard a whispering voice that seemed to be coming from the walls themselves. It was a low, rasping sound that sent shivers down their spines. The friends tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder and more insistent. They could make out words now, words that seemed to be in some ancient language they couldn't understand. And then suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light. When their eyes adjusted, they saw that they were no longer alone in the room. There were shadowy figures hovering above them, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. The friends tried to run, but the door wouldn't budge. They were trapped, and the shadowy figures were getting closer and closer. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The shadowy figures vanished, the whispers died down, and the room was silent once more. The friends stumbled out of the mansion, shaken and terrified by what they had experienced. They vowed never to return to the mansion again, but they knew that it would always be there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for its next victims. In the small town of Ravenwood, there was an old abandoned asylum that had been closed for years. The locals whispered of strange happenings in the asylum, of ghostly apparitions and unexplained noises that could be heard from outside the building. But despite the rumors, a group of friends decided to spend the night in the asylum, eager to explore the creepy corridors and uncover its secrets. As they entered the building, they were immediately struck by the eerie atmosphere. The air was thick with the musty smell of decay, and the walls were covered in peeling wallpaper and old medical equipment. The friends made their way through the dimly lit corridors, their flashlights illuminating the way. Footsteps echoed through the halls, doors creaked open and closed, and faint whispers could be heard coming from the shadows. They tried to brush it off, telling each other that it was just their imagination playing tricks on them, but as the night wore on, the noises grew louder and more insistent. And then they saw her, a ghostly apparition dressed in a hospital gown, her eyes hollow and empty. She floated towards them, her arms outstretched, as if she was reaching out to them. The friends tried to run, but the doors slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. As they huddled together in fear, the apparition appeared before them, her voice echoing through the room. She spoke of the horrors that had taken place in the asylum, of the patients who had been subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments. The friends listened in terror as she recounted the atrocities that had occurred within the walls of the asylum. And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, the ghostly apparition vanished, leaving the friends alone in the darkness. They stumbled out of the asylum, shaken and terrified by what they had experienced. They knew that they had come face to face with the tormented spirits of the asylum, and that they would never forget the horrors that they had witnessed. From that day on, the asylum was left untouched, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within the human soul. It was a dark and stormy night, the kind of night where the wind howled through the trees and the rain lashed against the windows. You could barely see a few feet in front of you, but in the distance, you could make out the silhouette of an abandoned hospital. It loomed in the darkness like a haunted fortress, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in vines. Some say the hospital had been closed down for years after a series of unexplained deaths occurred within its walls. Despite the rumors and warnings, a group of curious teenagers decided to explore the abandoned hospital. They parked their car at the end of the long driveway and made their way towards the entrance, using only their flashlights to guide them through the darkness. As they pushed open the creaky door, they were hit with the smell of decay and mold. The hospital was eerily quiet, with only the sound of their footsteps echoing through the hallways. As they made their way through the hospital, they stumbled upon strange symbols scrawled on the walls and floors. The air grew colder, and they could hear whispers and footsteps coming from the shadows. One by one, the teenagers started to disappear, dragged off into the darkness by an unseen force. The remaining few tried to flee, but the hospital seemed to have a mind of its own, with doors closing and locking behind them. Finally, they stumbled upon a room that seemed to be the epicenter of the strange occurrences. The walls were covered in blood, and in the center of the room, a single chair sat ominously. As they approached the chair, they could see a figure sitting in it, its back turned to them. Suddenly, the figure turned around, revealing a face twisted with madness and decay. The teenagers tried to run, but the figure was too fast, its long, bunny fingers reaching out and snatching them one by one. As the last teenager was dragged away, the hospital grew quiet once again, as if nothing had ever happened. But those who knew the truth would never forget the horrors that occurred within the abandoned hospital and the mysterious figure that still lurks within its walls to this day. Thank you for listening. If you want me to tell you another scary stories in the next coming radio videos, let me know in the comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.